Welcome to video 2 into my series of Microsoft Fabric DP-700. In this video I'm going to go through an introduction to Microsoft Fabric and Onelake. Microsoft Fabric is a cloud data and analytics platform that brings together data engineering, analytics, BI and basic machine learning. If you're already familiar with tools such as Power BI, Synapse, Data Factory and data warehousing, this brings these tools and more into one unified place. Onelake is the built-in tenant-wide data lake that Fabric provides automatically for your organization. This is the storage within Microsoft Fabric. It stores any file type, structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data, so CSVs, JSON logs, structured tables, PDFs, images, and more. Onelake appears as a single logical storage account, but is organized into folders for each workspace. Why this matters is because it is one copy per file avoids duplication. It keeps data consistent and simplifies governance and auditing. So in your organization, you may have multiple departments such as finance and HR. Each of these should have its own separate workspace. Within Microsoft Fabric, rather than ingesting the same file multiple times, you would ingest it once. So if you're pulling data from, say, Salesforce, you would ingest it once into the finance workspace. Then, if the HR workspace was to use it as well, it would reference it by shortcuts, which we will cover in a later video. Workspaces and containers. Workspaces are project containers for teams or projects and map to folders in Onelake. Each workspace holds lakehouses, data warehouses, pipelines, data flows, notebooks, and dashboards. This is where you will do the majority of your work. As I mentioned, each workspace can be used for a different department in your organization. For example, you could have a marketing workspace that holds lakehouses, pipelines, and a finance workspace that holds finance data. Workspaces isolate teams while allowing file references or shortcuts so teams can share data without copying. Workspaces also help with access control, tracking changes, data lineages, because data and metadata live together. Workspace roles and security. Fabric uses role-based access security for four main roles: admin, member, contributor, and viewer. For the DP-700 exam, it's important to remember that you always want to pick the lowest level if possible, which goes, the lowest level is viewer, then contributor, member, and admin. So admin is full control. Users who are admin can add or remove users, change workspace settings, and delete the workspace if needed. Members can create, edit, delete content, share items, and add other members or lower permission users. Contributor can build and modify content like pipelines and notebooks, but cannot manage users or workspace settings. And the viewer is read-only. So they can open reports, run queries, view dashboards, but they cannot edit or create items. So as I mentioned, you should give people the least privilege what they need. And on the exam, this is most likely what it is to focus on. You're to pick the least privilege access control for what the question will ask you to do. So for example, if it says to share items, you will be looking for a member rather than an admin. Fabric capacity and SKUs. Capacities are reserved pools of compute, CPU and memory, in Azure that Fabric uses for processing. Each capacity is bought as an SKU in the F series, for example F2, F4, 8, 16 and 64s. The number roughly equals capacity units. Workspaces are assigned to a capacity. That capacity supplies for compute queries and pipelines. So for the exam, what it will likely ask is related to if you need increased compute or you need to lower costs. So if you need increased compute, you would increase the F series. So if, for example, on F8, you may want to go to F16. If it's asking about lowering the costs, you may want to go from F4 to F2. Compute and storage are separate. Onelake holds the data capacities supply the compute to process it. The costs. Capacities are billed independently, usually hourly. Resize capacities to match the workload and budget. In the exam, you probably won't be asked about the associated costs other than knowing that going to a higher F series is a higher cost. So for a practical tip when you're using Microsoft Fabric, start with a smaller SKU for dev and testing. The costs can increase quite significantly, so it's best to start lower, F2 if possible, monitor performance and scale up for production workloads if needed. So key takeaways from these notes. Onelake is the single tenant-wide data lake for Fabric and keeps data consistent across the organization. Organize teams and projects into workspaces. Each workspace maps to a folder in Onelake and contains related artifacts. Use RBAC roles or role-based access control to control who can create, edit, and view content. Keep permissions minimal and review regularly. Assign workspaces to suitable capacities. F-series SKUs is what they're called, to match concurrency and processing needs. We're now going to go through 5 questions and answers which I think are likely to be on the exam. So question 1. What is Onelake in Microsoft Fabric? An SQL database, a single data lake for the entire tenant, a Power BI workspace, or an Azure blob container? And the answer is B, a single data lake for the entire tenant. Onelake is a single tenant-wide data lake that builds on ADSL Gen 2 that stores Fabric data into one place. Onelake is not just a SQL database. It stores many file types, not only structured tables. Workspaces live inside Onelake, but Onelake is a wider storage layer for all Fabric artifacts. And D is incorrect because Onelake is built on ADLS Gen 2, but it is a managed logical lake for Fabric rather than just a raw blob container. Question 2. Which workspace role is read-only? Admin, member, contributor, or viewer? And the answer to that is, of course, viewer. Viewer is read-only and cannot create or edit content, only views and runs items. For the exam, it's important to remember what the difference between member and contributor is. I think this is more likely where it'll ask, because these roles are quite similar. One key thing to remember is that members can share while contributors cannot. Question 3. What determines how much compute a workspace has? Its storage size, its assigned capacity, the number of users, or its Power BI license? And the answer to that is B, its assigned capacity. The assigned capacity, for example, F4 or F64, defines the compute resources available in a workspace. A is incorrect as storage size does not define compute power. C is correct as the number of users may increase load but does not determine the capacity size. And D is correct as it's not related to licensing. Question 4. Which statement about workspaces is true? They are just used for Power BI reports, they map to folders in Onelake, they replace Azure Data Factory, or they can only hold one type of item. And the answer is they map to folders in Onelake. Each workspace maps to a folder inside Onelake and contain many types of Fabric artifacts. A is incorrect as workspaces are not limited to Power BI. C is incorrect as Fabric pipelines exist, but Fabric does not directly replace all Azure Data Factory capabilities. D is incorrect as workspaces can contain many item types, not just one. And the final question, which SKU provides the most compute in this list? So of course that is F64 provides the most capability units rather than just F2, F8 or F16. If the question was about pricing, F2 would be the cheapest and F64 would be the most expensive. That brings me to the end of video 2. Thank you for watching.